We don't accept this crumpled trash money of yours. That sentence sliced through the seemingly peaceful noon air in the diner like a dagger. Simon Moore, the black man standing at the cashier counter, paused slightly, still holding the worn-out $20 bill, its edges torn, the paper creased and stained with old smudges. The bell jingled, signaling a customer. The glass door gently struck the stopper. A middle-aged black man, around his early 40s, tall but slightly hunched, stepped inside. He wore an old gray mouse-colored khaki coat, jeans faded at the knees, and worn-out sneakers. A thin brown beanie covered nearly half his forehead, and in his left hand he carried a small cloth bag, as if he had just arrived from a suburban bus stop. Chelsea Martin, the morning shift waitress, looked up at the customer, then immediately dropped her gaze, her lips curled slightly, just enough that no one would notice, but enough to sneer. "Table 9, she said flatly, eyes still not looking up. No smile, no welcome. Just a tone like giving orders to someone taking out the trash. Simon nodded. He wasn't surprised. In his life, he was used to that kind of look. Sitting down, Simon quietly looked at the menu. His eyes stopped at the house special sandwich, a popular dish that had been rated fairly well. A few minutes later, Chelsea walked over. Her hand held the order pad, but no pen. "What do you want to drink?" she asked, still glancing at her phone, hidden under the tray. Simon responded politely, "A glass of water, no ice, and the house special sandwich." Chelsea looked up, the first time she looked him in the eye, not out of concern, but to assess whether he could afford it. "House special is $12. No substitutions. If you want something cheaper, there's the chicken burger, just $5. Simon kept his calm voice. "Thank you, but I'll have the sandwich." The waitress jotted it down in her pad and turned away without even saying okay or coming right up. A white couple at the next table glanced at Simon while eating. With a hint of discomfort, the woman whispered, "Don't know how people like that even get in here." Simon heard it, but he stayed silent. That's the first lesson of success. Never react to things unworthy of your energy. 15 minutes later, the food was dropped on the table without any friendliness. The sandwich was crooked, lettuce spilling out, and the glass of water, though ice-free, was filled to the brim, spilling over onto the tablecloth. Simon still said thank you. He ate slowly, with dignity. His knife and fork movements were refined, a sharp contrast to his rugged appearance. But no one noticed, because to those around him, he was just a poor old man, and the poor aren't worth a closer look. After finishing, he walked up to the cashier. Chelsea was behind the counter again. Simon pulled out his wallet, an old leather one with frayed edges, and took out a crumpled $20 bill. A small corner was torn, and there was a faint coffee stain on part of it, but it was still legal tender. Chelsea picked up the bill as if it were dirty. She flipped it back and forth, then raised an eyebrow. "You think I'm going to take this?" She held the bill high, as if to show everyone, "This is a restaurant, not some old newspaper stand or junkyard." Simon replied gently, "It's still legal money, still valid for beggars." "Maybe." She sneered. "If you don't have clean money, forget it. I can call the cops. No problem. Customers like you give this place a bad name." A customer behind him stepped back, pulling her young son away. The boy asked, "Mom, what did that man do wrong?" The mother didn't answer, but she looked at Simon with wary eyes. Simon quietly looked at the bill, placed back on the counter. He didn't argue, just bowed his head, picked it up, and opened his wallet to gather coins. $1 coins. 50 cents, 25 cents, rolled onto the counter. His hand trembled slightly, not from shame, but from an old, aching feeling being looked down on for how he looked. As he left the diner, no one noticed the tiny camera hidden in the button on his coat was still recording. No one heard his sigh as he glanced at the restaurant's slogan on the wall, "Every meal comes with a smile." Simon whispered, "Unless The ones being served don't look like me. And then he walked away slow, steady, carrying that lump of pain in his chest. The next morning, Chelsea Martin, with her high ponytail, bright red lipstick, and her usual confident gaze, pushed the door open and stepped into the diner like every other day. In her hand was a latte and a phone playing music. Everything felt routine, until she noticed something unusual. The area manager was sitting at the table near the counter, along with two men in suits. She raised an eyebrow and walked over. "Good morning. Boss?" "What brings everyone in so early?" she asked with a polite smile. The manager didn't return the smile. One of the two unfamiliar men in gray suits, holding a tablet, looked up and nodded. "Monsieur Chelsea Martin." Yes, we're from the executive board of Moore Holdings. This branch was officially acquired last week. As of this morning, by direct order from headquarters, you are formally suspended for serious violation of customer service regulations." The words hit like a boulder. Chelsea's eyes widened. What suspended for what? Who filed a complaint? There is visual evidence and surveillance footage. You may submit a response via email, but as of now, you no longer have access to the internal system. Wait, this must be some mistake. Chelsea raised her voice. A few customers turned to look. The other staff in the diner kept their heads down. No one dared to intervene. The store manager sighed, not daring to get involved. "Chelsea, they have direct instructions from the corporation. I can't do anything." Chelsea's face flushed red. She clenched her teeth. "I worked a full shift yesterday with no support. And just because of a stinking black man and a crumpled bill, you're firing me." The moment those words left her mouth, the room fell silent. A female employee, emerging from the kitchen, froze in place. A middle-aged customer stood up and walked out. That sentence was no longer a defense. It was a confession. Chelsea stormed out of the diner, angrily dialing the regional HR department. "This is Chelsea Martin. I was just wrongfully suspended. I need to speak to the regional supervisor or head of HR immediately." The voice on the line was unfamiliar. "I'm sorry. The system shows no record of anyone by that name in branch 14. What? Please verify the name or employee ID." Chelsea spelled out every letter. But each time, she received the same response. No record found. She rushed home, opened her laptop, tried to log into her company email, access denied, tried to log into the timekeeping system, account does not exist, tried to access the internal chat group, you have been removed from the group. Chelsea began to tremble. Chelsea stood before the familiar glass door, the one she used to walk through with the posture of someone in charge of a work shift. Today, she wore nothing more than a faded oversized hoodie, wrinkled jeans, and a pair of white sneakers now stained with road dust. No makeup, no lipstick. Only her real face remained tired, pale, and eyes sunken into dark hollows like two deep shadows. She took a breath and stepped inside. The doorbell rang, signaling a stranger's entrance, and every eye lifted, then quickly looked away. Behind the counter was Layla, the new girl Chelsea once ordered to take out the trash during lunch break. She froze for a second upon seeing Chelsea but showed no emotion. No greeting. No one asked. "Can I help you?" The air was heavy like lead. Chelsea walked slowly to the counter, nodding slightly. "I just want to collect my pay." For the past 3 days, the manager, a middle-aged man who used to have lunch with her every week, looked up from the back corner table. His eyes lingered for a moment, then dropped down as if he hadn't seen her. Layla left the counter, went into the back, then returned with a light brown envelope in hand. She placed it firmly on the counter, like stamping a final decision. She didn't look directly at Chelsea, only spoke in a flat tone. Like reading from a machine, "This is the estimated pay. The company has decided not to work with you anymore. If you continue to come here and cause disturbance, we will call the police for disorderly conduct." Chelsea stood frozen. What did you say I used to run this shift? I trained you people. Layla tilted her head slightly, a small gesture, but one sharp enough to pierce the heart. You used to. Now, you're just a stranger. That voice held no emotion, exactly like the tone Chelsea once used on customers who didn't look right for this place. She had once used that very gaze to deny someone's existence. Now, it was being returned to her perfectly. Chelsea looked around, hoping for a sympathetic glance. There was none. The colleague who once borrowed her lipstick was now pretending to wipe a table. The cashier she once covered a late shift for was now glued to his screen. No one stood with her. No one. She clenched her fists. Her chest hurt, like someone had punched her straight in the heart. Chelsea collapsed onto the long bench near the door, covering her face and gasping for air. Not because she didn't get her money, but because for the first time, she felt like she was the stain everyone wanted to wipe away. Moments later, she forced herself to stand. As she walked out of the diner, her hand slammed the glass door with a loud bang, like an unspoken accusation. An old lottery ticket vendor nearby flinched and pulled her card away. A young man lifted his phone to record. Smirking, another drama. She looks so pale it hurts. Just a few hours later, the clip titled, "White Woman Freaks Out and Trashes Diner," demanding her paycheck, would go live on TikTok. No one knew who she was. No one cared why. They just saw someone cheap and pitiful. Chelsea looked up, tears still clinging to the corners of her eyes. That was when she saw a new sign. Posted just outside the glass door, the very spot where the old restaurant logo used to be. Moore Holdings Corporation. Officially acquired. We uphold a zero-tolerance policy for discriminatory behavior. Her eyes widened. The words Moore Holdings echoed through her mind like a drumbeat. She took a step back, then another. Her lips moved unconsciously more. That sounds familiar. A flash of memory struck her that day. That black man in a knit beanie. His worn clothes, his sorrowful eyes, and the crumpled bill. She saw that gaze again, not angry, not vengeful, just an overwhelming silence as deep as the ocean. Chelsea froze in place. She stepped back from the sign, as if it had just punched her straight in the chest. Moore Holdings. The name repeated in her mind like church bells. Each toll rang a layer of memory. She squinted at the company logo's symbol, modern typography, and beneath it, a small slogan, "Restructure with Dignity." Her chest tightened. That day, that man, the crumpled bill, those eyes are not furious. That quiet nod after being humiliated. Didn't he smile then, a smile not of joy, but of quiet certainty? Just before walking out the door, she held her head. No way. There's no way it was him. Chelsea wandered the streets all afternoon. No friends, no coworkers replied to her messages. Messenger only showed delivered. Never seen. The group chats that used to buzz all night during shifts were now silent as a grave. She went home and turned on her computer. She logged back into job platforms, planning to apply for a barista position, but her application was instantly rejected with the reason violation of customer service standards. How did they know she went to Google and searched for her own name? And then she saw it. A TikTok video with over 140,000 views, titled, "Restaurant Worker Shamelessly Insults Poor Customer." Karma hits the next day. There she was holding up the crumpled bill, eyes filled with contempt, mouth mouthing cruel words, all captured by a button camera. The angle was from the customer's point of view. Chelsea was frozen. She turned on the sound. Her own voice played, "If you don't have clean money, then forget it. I can call the police. Customers like you ruin this place's reputation." That voice, was it really hers? She watched it again. Then again, the first time, she felt angry. The second time, she felt misunderstood. By the third, she began to feel disgusted with her own voice. Not because of the words, but because of the way she enjoyed belittling someone else. She curled up on the sofa, eyes staring blankly at the ceiling. Her phone buzzed. A new email from an anonymous address from Norreply, moreholdings.com, subject, confidential. Internal notice of staff conduct evaluation. She opened it. Inside was an official report excerpted from the customer feedback management system, documenting verbatim the events of that day. At the bottom was a digital signature, Simon Moore, founder and group CEO, Moore Holdings Incorporated. Chelsea turned pale. She read it again and again. Simon Moore. Simon. No way. She went online and searched for images. But Simon Moore was known to be a private CEO. There were barely any personal photos publicly available. There was only one article from slumboy to founder of a humanitarian restaurant chain, the black man who built an empire no one believed in. Chelsea swallowed hard. The article read, Simon often personally visits newly acquired branches. He once said, I don't want to hear from managers. I want to go there myself, as a customer. The next morning, Chelsea stood in front of the mirror. She put on her old uniform, a white shirt and apron, the outfit that once made her feel powerful. But today, looking into the mirror, all she saw was someone clinging desperately to something, anything to keep from falling apart. No more proud eyes, no more red lips, only Chelsea, trembling. She walked outside, heading to a small charity center that once helped homeless people find jobs. She filled out a volunteer form. And when it came to the question reason for applying, she hesitated, then wrote, I want to understand what it feels like to be treated like you're disposable. While she was cleaning the kitchen with a few other volunteers, a tall figure walked past the hallway behind them, and no one noticed. But Chelsea looked up, her heart pounding. She had just caught a glimpse of a man in a gray coat and a familiar brown beanie. That person didn't look at her, but she saw. Very clearly. She stood frozen, like a statue. It's him. And for the first time in her life, Chelsea felt not afraid of being punished, but afraid that she would not be forgiven. It was drizzling. Tiny drops of water blurred the glass window on the third floor of the charity center. Chelsea was wiping the tables, rubber gloves on her hands, the old apron catching at her hips every time she bent down. Sweat soaked through her shirt, despite the cool weather, not from exhaustion, but from anxiety. She wasn't sure what she had seen yesterday. Maybe it was a hallucination, or maybe he had really been there, quietly watching her like a judge who needed no words to make the contestant break into a cold sweat. That afternoon, she was called into the center's office. She thought it was just a routine evaluation, but when she walked in, sitting across from her was a black man wearing a dark blue suit, a white shirt with an open collar, no tie. His hand rested lightly on the table. No documents, no laptop. His eyes looked straight at her. Simon Moore. Chelsea stiffened. There was no mistaking it. Even though he now had a clean shave, short cropped hair, no longer wearing a beanie and wrinkled coat. But those eyes, that gaze, were unforgettable. He didn't speak immediately, just looked. She felt her throat dry. She swallowed, then spoke first. It's you. Simon nodded slightly, still not looking away. You recognized me faster than I expected. Chelsea lowered her head. I have no excuse. Simon didn't respond. He leaned over and pulled a small device from his jacket. Pressed a button. A video played on the screen in the middle of the room, a scene of Chelsea holding up a torn bill. Her mouth curled in contempt. Chelsea didn't look. She closed her eyes. Please, stop playing it. Why? Simon asked. His voice wasn't loud, wasn't harsh, just a quiet blade cutting deep inside. Because you're ashamed, or because you just don't want to hear yourself again, Chelsea said nothing. Simon sat back, fingers interlaced. I didn't come here to punish. I didn't send lawyers, didn't sue. I didn't get you fired by threatening the management. I just presented the video and let them decide. Because I believe, he paused, then said each word clearly. Everyone should get to see themselves in the mirror, no matter how ugly the reflection may be. Chelsea burst into tears. No screaming, no protest, just tears pouring out like a broken faucet after days of holding it in. I never realized how despicable I looked. Simon leaned back. I was once a boy kicked out of a convenience store just for leaving dirty handprints on the shelf. I once stood among dozens of white people and knew they didn't need to hear me speak. Just looking at my skin color was enough to judge. But I survived, not to take revenge, but so that people like you could understand the pain you once thought was harmless. Simon stood up, walked to the window, looked out at the yard where a group of volunteers was handing out food. I have two choices for you. One, let you continue living with a ruined reputation. No one hiring, no one trusting. Two, he turned back, his eyes bright under the sunlight slanting through the window. You start over, from zero, but this time under my watch. Chelsea looked up, startled. You mean? Simon took out a name tag from his pocket. Chelsea Martin, Media Support Volunteer. Reflected Grace Foundation. I'm not hiring you, but I'll let you relearn. No salary, no benefits, just responsibility. And the eyes of those you once looked down on. Chelsea took the tag. Her hands trembled. Why? Are you giving me a chance? Simon looked at her, without smiling. Because if I don't, you'll always be Chelsea Martin, the one who humiliated a customer. But if I do, then you'll have the chance to become Chelsea, the one who understands pain and knows how to use it to heal others. That afternoon, Chelsea wore her name tag, donned the charity vest, and joined the team to distribute food. She was clumsy, awkward, receiving strange looks as if they recognized her from the TikTok clip. But then, when she handed a meal box to an old homeless man, he grinned with missing teeth and said, "Thank you, Miss. Not everyone is kind to us." Chelsea bowed her head, and for the first time, felt a lightness in her heart. But as soon as she looked up at the corner of the street, not far away, Simon was standing, arms crossed, leaning against a black SUV, saying nothing, just watching. Chelsea knew. The real punishment had only just begun. 2 weeks since Chelsea stepped into the Reflected Grace Foundation. No salary, no privileges. No one called her shift leader or stylish Chelsea anymore. Here, she was just a volunteer in a faded white t-shirt, her name embroidered in red thread, standing in line handing out bread, wiping greasy tables, and sometimes untangling strands of hair stuck in a homeless person's comb. The time here wasn't long, but each day for Chelsea felt like a lifetime. On Tuesday morning, Chelsea and a group of volunteers went to the area under the train bridge, a place where many homeless people spent the night. Each person was given a box of hot food, warm water, and some hygiene supplies. Chelsea carried a large box, walking past each person, trying to put on a friendly smile, but the looks she received weren't of gratitude, but of suspicion, indifference, the same look she used to give those drifters outside the restaurant door. An elderly man, with a silvery white beard, looked her straight in the eye, then turned away without taking the food. "You're not doing this just to make up for something, are you?" His voice was hoarse and slow. Chelsea stood frozen. A young girl, about 19, dark-skinned, her pregnant belly visible under a torn hoodie, was sitting in the corner of the park. Chelsea approached, knelt down and handed her a bag of bread and water. The girl looked up, her eyes swollen, lips chapped. "You were that waitress in the video, weren't you?" Chelsea's throat tightened. She gave a slight nod. "I used to go to that place. Every time I walked by, I always took a detour so I wouldn't get stared at." Now you're handing out food to people like us? Chelsea clenched the bag in her hand, but didn't force it. She set it down next to the girl, then stepped back. I don't expect to be trusted, but I want to start learning from the beginning. That night, Chelsea cleaned the charity kitchen alone. The sink was piled high with pans, pots, bowls, and cups. The dishwater splashed onto her hands, stinging the scratches caused by manual labor. She was tired. Her eyes burned. Her throat tightened. Then suddenly, she collapsed to the floor, hands still covered in soap suds, her head resting on her knees. She cried. No one saw. No one comforted her. A pair of feet approached, worn-down shoes, heels marked with calluses. A bare hand reached out. It was Mrs. Della, an elderly black woman who had worked here for over 15 years, small in stature, but her eyes were strangely bright. Lift your head, girl. No one is punishing you. But if you're learning, then learn properly. Don't learn halfway. Chelsea froze, then nodded. For the first time in her life, she was grateful to be treated as someone truly beginning to make amends and change. On Sunday night, Chelsea was invited to assist at a sharing event in Reflected Grace's Hall, where some formerly homeless individuals told their stories of overcoming hardship. She didn't go on stage, just stood behind the scenes, handing microphones to the speakers. The man speaking, his voice emotional, being looked down on even once leaves a scar that never fades. But there was one organization that made me feel I wasn't trash. Chelsea looked around and saw in the last row. Simon was sitting, not wearing a suit, not formal, just a simple man, sitting quietly, hands clasped, eyes focused on the stage. She didn't dare greet him, didn't dare step forward. She only knew she was being watched, not to be judged but to see whether she truly changed. After the event, Chelsea was assigned to collect any forgotten items. While cleaning the seats, she found a crumpled $20 bill left under the last row. She picked it up. The bill was old, torn at the edge, a faint stain, just like the one from that day. She looked up, but the seat was empty. Simon had already left. No one saw when he left. She held the bill, clutching it tightly. No one said anything. No one lectured her. But the message was as clear as if etched into her heart. This is both punishment and opportunity. It's up to you how you face it. Simon didn't return the next morning, all day. Chelsea worked with tension strung tight like a bowstring, her eyes glancing toward the door as if waiting for an invisible teacher to step in at any moment to grade her final exam. But he didn't come. Monday passed, then Tuesday. Still no word. His silence was colder than any punishment. Chelsea began to wonder, had he decided to abandon her, or was he watching from afar, waiting to see if she was truly persistent, or just putting on a performance? And just then, something unexpected happened. She was called into the director's office of Reflected Grace. Inside, there was no Simon, only an older woman with graying hair and gold-rimmed glasses. Her name was Claire, Human Resources Director of the Charity Foundation. Simon wants me to ask you one question, she said, opening the folder on the table. If today he offered to restore your reputation, gave you an official position in the Moore Holdings system, higher salary, private office, would you accept? Chelsea froze. I'm not sure. Claire didn't blink. He said, if you hesitate, then decline. What? Chelsea widened her eyes. Simon doesn't need gratitude. He only wants change. She closed the file and pushed it toward Chelsea. Your volunteer position remains. But if you want to return to the old you, this is the shortcut. Chelsea looked at the paper. Just a signature, and she would return to that world of success. But success without forgiveness. Is it worth it? She picked up the pen, then stopped. Her hand trembled. She remembered the torn $20 bill, remembered the sad eyes of the man she once humiliated, Remembered that first night scrubbing the bathroom floor for the homeless at the center. She put the pen down on the table. Thank you, but I'm not worthy yet. Chelsea returned to the supply station with a lighter heart. She didn't need to be forgiven immediately, but she needed to keep going. She began writing a journal, day by day, noting what she learned, the people she met, gradually. Her notebook thickened, and the calluses in her heart began to fade, until one Saturday afternoon, when a young volunteer handed her a white envelope. Someone sent this for you. Inside was a handwritten letter, on high-quality paper, lightly scented like sandalwood. There was only one line, written in strong handwriting: if you still choose the hard path, come to room 7, 10th floor, at 7 p.m. tonight. Chelsea arrived on time. The 10th floor was where internal meetings of Moore Holdings senior members were held. Room 7's door opened, and Chelsea froze. Inside was a small conference room. Round table, high-end leather chairs. But there was no board, no senior staff, only one chair and a large mirror hanging opposite. On the table was a black envelope. She opened it, a single sheet of paper, with bold printed words, "Interview yourself." Chelsea sat down. She looked into the mirror, for the first time, not with the eyes of a critic, but with the eyes of someone who once caused pain, now trying to heal. She began to speak, at first softly, then it poured out. She spoke of a childhood forced into comparisons, of the fear of poverty that made her reject anything unclean, unkempt, or unworthy. She spoke of a career built by stepping on others' insecurities. And then she went silent. A click sounded. Behind the mirror, it was actually a one-way glass. The door on the right opened. Simon stepped in. Simon didn't sit. He just stood there, looking at Chelsea, trembling in the chair. "You've come further than I expected," he said, his voice no longer distant. "You heard everything Chelsea asked, eyes red. No, I only heard the final silence." Chelsea pressed her lips together. "So? I'll be working for you again?" Simon shook his head. "I don't want an employee. I want a partner." He took out a stack of documents. "This is the new project, the Mirror Room, a chain of therapy spaces where those who once discriminated against others must sit and face themselves before apologizing to anyone." Simon pushed the folder toward her. "I want you to lead the first pilot program." Chelsea opened her mouth, unable to speak, "Because you have lived on both sides." Chelsea signed, not for reputation, but for a genuine feeling she wanted to prove she had changed. The next day, an internal announcement was sent throughout the system, reflected. Grace launches a new initiative, led by Chelsea Martin, formerly the center of a discrimination scandal. Immediately, the internal network was shaken. Comments arose. "We're using someone who caused harm as a symbol, so making mistakes now comes with a reward. She faked it for a while, and now she's climbing over all of us." Chelsea read them all, didn't argue, didn't justify, because now she knew she didn't need everyone's forgiveness. She needed time to forgive herself. That evening, as Chelsea was walking out of the headquarters building, a man in a black hoodie appeared near the parking lot. He held up a phone and took a picture of her. "Who are you?" Chelsea asked, wary. The man smirked and stepped back a few paces. "You think you escaped your past that easily?" Chelsea froze. "Tomorrow, more people will know about the Chelsea Martin of the past, the one you never dared to reveal." The man walked away, leaving Chelsea standing there, stunned. Chelsea woke up the next morning with a feeling she thought she had grown used to fear. But unlike the early days after the fall, this time the fear didn't come from within. It came from a hand trying to drag her back to the past. Who was the man in the black hoodie last night? A journalist? A blackmailer? Or worse, one of her past victims, now seeking revenge in his own way, opening her phone. She saw an anonymous email sent at 3:17 a.m., no subject, no message, only one attachment, a photo of her. At 25, laughing gleefully while tearing up a job application over a bar counter. With a caption she once jokingly posted on Facebook, "If you don't have a degree, you better learn to make iced tea instead of applying at my restaurant." Her heart sank. She remembered that moment, and she also remembered clearly the young black man who lowered his head and walked away after being mercilessly rejected by her. Simon called her into the office at 9 a.m. He didn't offer any greeting, just slid toward her, a tablet, with an online news article open. The woman who once mocked the poor is now the face of service ethics. Simon looked up, his gaze calm but not gentle. Someone is digging up your past, and this time, it's not just a clip. Chelsea bit her lip. "I guess I deserve it." Simon didn't reply immediately. He stood up, turned his back, looking out the window. "You have two choices. One is to hide. We'll remove your name from all documents related to the mirror room. The organization will continue, but you'll disappear from the leadership role." Chelsea nodded slightly. No surprise, no objection. "What's the second?" she asked. Simon turned back. "The second is to step onto the stage. No excuses, no begging for mercy. Just tell everything exactly as it was, and let others judge, the same way I once let you." Chelsea went quiet. She understood if she chose the second path, she would never again be allowed to be a new person. She would forever be someone who once did wrong, trying to make amends under watchful and skeptical eyes for life. But this time, she didn't hesitate. "I'll step out." A day later, Chelsea received an invitation to appear on the online program Facing the Mirror, where public figures confront their past mistakes. Her interviewer was none other than Lamar Gibson. The moment he walked into the studio, Chelsea froze. She recognized that face immediately, the young man she had once driven away from her restaurant. Lamar sat across from her, eyes sharp as blades, his polite smile hard as stone. "Do you remember me?" Chelsea nodded. Very clearly. "Good. Because today, I'm going to ask you everything I wasn't allowed to say back then." The recording began. The cameras turned. The lights burned hot. Lamar didn't hold back. He repeated every word Chelsea had once posted online, the arrogant statuses, the comments mocking people with low education, the sarcastic remarks about customers being stinky, dirty, sloppy. Chelsea denied nothing. Every time he asked, she only replied, "Yes. I said that, and I believed it at the time. But I'm not proud of it, and if it weren't for that fall..." "Would you have changed?" Lamar asked. "Maybe not." She answered truthfully. A heavy silence spread. After the recording, Chelsea sat in the waiting room. Lamar walked in. "No more cameras, no more lights. You know," he said, voice lower. "Part of me wanted you to fall apart on live stream." Chelsea looked at him, without resentment. "But another part," Lamar continued, "saw something real trembling in your eyes." Chelsea swallowed. "So? Do I have a chance?" Lamar didn't answer. He only said one thing: "Chances don't come from me. They come from the people whose faces you never remembered, but who remember you for the rest of their lives." When the recorded episode aired, Chelsea became the center of a media storm. One side condemned her as an opportunist, a performer, building a moral image to profit from remorse. The other side, people who had experienced their own downfalls, stood up to defend her. "I used to discriminate. I used to laugh at others' tears. I understand her, instead of pushing her down. Why don't we wait to see what she does next?" But among all those comments, a quiet email landed in Simon Moore's inbox. Sender unnamed. Only one attached file evidence showing that Chelsea once took money from customers to reserve good seats at her former restaurant. A minor act of corruption, but if exposed, it would shatter all her efforts at rebuilding. Simon stared at the screen in silence for a long time. 3 days later, Simon called an emergency internal meeting. Chelsea was invited. Without knowing the reason, she entered the room and saw Lamar sitting next to Simon. The air was thick. Everyone was silent, like statues. Simon pushed a folder toward her. Inside were screenshots of old text messages between Chelsea and a regular customer, implying a bribe to reserve a good view table on Valentine's Day, something that seemed small, but enough to destroy everything. Chelsea stood frozen. Simon finally spoke. His first words after many days of silence. Chelsea, now it's your turn. Truth or more acting? The meeting room felt like all air had been sucked out. Everyone looked at Chelsea, but no one said a word. Even the colleagues who had laughed with her in recent weeks now silent. Their eyes shifting between worry and judgment, Simon remained seated, hands clasped, eyes fixed on Chelsea's face. She didn't blink. The folder in front of her lay open like an old wound torn apart, screenshots of messages between her and a wealthy client. An old message, one she had nearly forgotten, or purposely forgotten. The message said, "If you tip an extra $200, I'll save you the second floor view table." The restaurant's fully booked already. That year, she had just been promoted to shift leader. She believed prioritizing VIP guests was a smart move, not a wrong one. Chelsea looked up at Simon, then turned to Lamar. "Who sent this to you?" she asked, her voice not shaking, but slow. Simon didn't answer. Lamar rested his chin on his hand, eyes still locked on her, as if waiting for some natural reflex, a sign of lying, a denial. But Chelsea didn't deny. "It's true," she said. "I did that, and not just once." Another wave of silence spread. She could feel Claire, the HR director, subtly tense her shoulders. Chelsea looked at Simon. "You want me to leave, don't you?" Simon shook his head. "I don't want anything. I just want you to understand, forgiveness doesn't come from outside." Then from where, she asked? From the willingness to bear the full consequences, without dodging even a single piece. Chelsea took a deep breath. "I abused my position because I thought it didn't hurt anyone. I never kicked anyone out for being poor, but I did prioritize the rich. That's also discrimination." She turned to Claire, voice firmer. "If the company wants me gone, I'll sign. But if I'm allowed to stay, I don't want to be the representative. I want to do the job I know I'm truly qualified for: cleaning, handing out meals, listening, quietly." Simon exchanged a short look with Claire. She nodded. Simon closed the folder. "We won't fire you, but starting today, you'll step down from the Mirror Room project. It will continue, but without your name on it." Chelsea bowed her head. "I understand." Lamar let out a slight sigh. "You know, I still haven't forgiven you. But at least, now I believe you're not acting anymore." The meeting ended. Everyone left. Only Chelsea remained in the empty room. Suddenly, there was a soft knock at the door. A familiar voice called out, "Miss Chelsea." It was Layla, the girl Chelsea used to boss around at the restaurant, the one who once handed her a paycheck with a cold stare. Layla stepped in, holding a paper bag. Inside was a hamburger. "I heard you haven't eaten since morning." Chelsea looked up, surprised. Layla placed the bag on the table, then stood upright and spoke slowly. "I used to hate you, really hate you, but I followed every post you wrote, every interview, and today, I saw you were the first person to say I was wrong, without hiding behind any excuse. I haven't forgotten what you did, but I believe some people deserve a real chance." Chelsea went still, not because of the encouragement, but because it came from the last person she ever thought would say it. That night, Chelsea left the office late. She walked through the underground parking lot, where only a few cars remained under dim yellow lights. Footsteps echoed behind her, very soft, very steady. She turned back to no one there. A chill ran down her spine. She walked faster. Her heart pounded. A message came in. No sender name. The old restaurant is just the beginning. You once covered up the wrongful firing of a female employee who reported the head chef for harassment. Remember? Chelsea froze. Her hand clenched the phone. She knew the message was true. This was the real bomb. 3 years ago, a girl named Marcy Chen, a kitchen assistant, had anonymously reported the head chef's groping in the cold storage room. Chelsea, as the shift leader then, received the letter, but fearing it would affect the restaurant's image, she buried the complaint and quietly requested to end Marcy's trial contract. No one knew. Marcy left silently. But now, she was back. The next day, a social media post appeared from an account named Chen Marcy. They call her a symbol of redemption. I call her someone who once silenced a victim. Simon called Chelsea into his office. His face is more serious than ever. I got an email from Marcy's lawyer. She's preparing to sue Moore Holdings for covering up harassment. Chelsea nearly collapsed. No, I just thought I was protecting the company's reputation. Simon cut her off. That's what everyone who covers up wrongdoing has always told themselves. He placed 2 documents on the table. Chelsea sat frozen, eyes locked on the 2 sheets before her, like they were blades at her throat. One was cold white, a resignation letter, silent retreat, as if she had never existed. The other burned a public apology, where she would be dissected, mocked, and possibly never forgiven. Simon didn't rush her. He left the room, the door ajar, a silent message. This time, you have to choose yourself. Chelsea looked at her hands. Hands that once pushed others down to climb up, hands that once held a crumpled $20 bill with contempt. Now, those hands trembled, but was true courage. Standing up or bowing at the right time, she reached for the pen, and then she signed both papers. Simon returned, surprised to see Chelsea had placed both signed sheets on the table. She looked up, her eyes no longer pleading or defensive. I resign from my leadership position, but I will still speak at the press conference, not as a company representative, but as someone who once did wrong. Simon paused for a few seconds. You know you'll take the full blow of public criticism, Chelsea nodded. Exactly what I need. 2 days later, Chelsea appeared before the media at the community center in the Southern District, the place where she once served meals to the homeless. No fancy dress, no lapel mic. Just a plain white shirt, no makeup, hair neatly tied up. In front of her were dozens of camera lenses. Behind her was a signboard. Apologizing is not a weakness. It's a beginning. Chelsea stepped up to the podium, opened her notes, then set them down. I won't read from a script. 3 years ago, I received a complaint about harassment during my shift. I chose silence, not because I didn't believe the accuser, but because I believed that the restaurant's reputation mattered more than a young woman's pain. I was wrong. No reasoning, no logic. Can make my silence the right thing. She paused, eyes searching for the camera lens. Marcy Chen, if you're watching, I don't ask for your forgiveness, but I want you to know I will not hide anymore. Below, a small woman wearing a hat and face mask gently nodded. Chelsea recognized her. Marcy. A moment of silence passed, enough to make millions watching the live stream hold their breath. Marcy stood up, took off the mask, and stepped onto the stage. Marcy stood beside Chelsea. The cameras panned, the auditorium buzzed. Marcy held the microphone. Her voice was soft and clear. I once thought I wanted her to lose everything. But today, I stand here, not to see someone fall, but to show even someone who once hurt me, if they dare to step forward, deserves a path to make things right. The whole auditorium rose, not to cheer, but because they were witnessing something almost impossible. The person who caused pain and the victim standing together on stage, not to soothe, but to confront. The media immediately split. One side praised Chelsea's bravery, the other criticized it as a performance of fake morality. But regardless of what anyone said, Chelsea kept going. She didn't go on talk shows, didn't accept media contracts. She returned to being a full-time volunteer, quietly, anonymously. Every Saturday afternoon, a small street corner, once home to the old restaurant, buzzes again with laughter and voices. No more wary glances, no more scent of contempt in the wind, only the aroma of hot tea rising from plain white ceramic cups, neatly arranged on old wooden tables, freshly repainted by hand. The woman behind the counter, coarse wool sweater, tied-up hair, gentle eyes, smiles at every person who approaches. "What's your name?" she always asks before pouring tea. That question may seem small, but in the world of those once called by numbers, once shouted at instead of welcomed, it is a declaration: I see you. You are not invisible. And so, they stay, on the sidewalk, around folding tables. Some sing, some recite poetry, some just sit quietly, sipping tea and feeling warm. Chelsea never tells her past, but if anyone asks, she simply smiles. "I used to stand behind a counter, but served the wrong people. Now I stand here, to serve those who were once forgotten."